I'm Courtney from Courtney's Crystals. I am a crystal medium and spiritual mentor. That means I talk to rocks. You got it. I talk to the spirits of crystals to help my clients expand their spiritual gifts, whether it's clairvoyance or claircognizance or clairaudience. I help my clients develop their gifts using crystals. So, hello, I am here today to talk to you all about cleansing your crystals. And I realize this is a more common question that people have than I realized. I've done actually a few videos on this already. I'm going to try to keep this one short. I can go on for an hour just about smoke clearing, and I might sometime because it's my favorite way to do it. And there's so many different ways to do it. And I also found some tips and tricks to use something like loose incense with charcoal and things like that. So I'm not going to address that today, but I plan to on another video because there's some nuances to it, surprisingly. This time, I'm going to just keep it simple and straightforward. This video is intended more for beginners, but that's not to say you have to leave. I encourage you to stay at least for the beginning, because the reason I'm doing this video and I start talking about cleansing your crystals is I kind of don't like doing this because it feels mean, but I've just noticed a lot of misinformation out there, especially like I love the cute little freaking memes that people put together, especially on Instagram, where it's like got these cute little images and it's like ways to cleanse your crystal. Half the time those memes are wrong, and I don't know where they're coming from. And a lot of times it's from people that I think should know better, that sell crystals or work a lot with crystals. But the most recent one that upset me was there was somebody who's like, oh, malachite is a great crystal for plants and plant health. And I was like, unless you put malachite in the plant, it's bad for the plant and the crystal. So malachite and water are not friends. It'll ruin the polish on malachite and malachite itself. It will dissolve. And when it's out of its polished form, which is why you usually find malachite polish, it can be toxic. It has things that are toxic inside of it. So you also do not want to use it in your gem elixirs and things like that. So that's a story for another time. But that's the whole reason I'm doing this, is because oh my goodness, some of the like top tips for cleansing your crystals, even like the #1 Google search, I was like, how do you cleanse your celestite? Because I have a few pieces that I'm selling and they get dusty. So I want to like literally cleanse them off. And the top cleansing ritual is to put it in water. If you put your celestite in water, it will dissolve. So how to cleanse your crystals, how not to. So I'm going to first cover the things that can ruin your crystals. And spoiler alert, I've already addressed a couple of them. The first is avoid sunlight. A lot of people are like, oh, you've got to cleanse your crystals and charge them in sunlight. It is a great way to fade the color of your crystals. So if you're spending extra money, especially on your amethyst, to get that beautiful, deep, rich purple color, a great way to fade it is to put it directly into sunlight. So you might not want to do that. A lot of other crystals can get faded or cloudy. It can happen. I've seen it with labradorite. The crystals grow in caves under the earth, and they aren't formed with sunlight. So I'm not sure where that ritual came into being. I'm sure it's because there's a lot of other rituals that you can do with sunlight, but extended exposure and direct sunlight is going to damage your crystal. The only one that sometimes makes it clear, like I've heard of people in the metaphysical community say, oh, my clear quartz got cloudy. How can I make it clearer? Clear quartz is one of the crystals that you can put in the sunlight. But then the downside to that is I've heard, and actually I thought this was an urban legend until I heard this from somebody that I trust that owns a metaphysical shop out in LA. She was telling my class, she's one of my teachers, she was telling us, she's like, yeah, I had a big, beautiful clear quartz sphere and I caught the light just right and it started a fire. So it's an amplifier, remember that. So it can amplify the sunlight and literally act like a magnifying glass and catch things on fire. So just safety tips, things to be aware of. You can, of course, do anything you want with your crystals. They are yours, but I just want you to both be safe when using them. And especially because mixing some with water is not safe. It's not safe to drink certain gem elixirs and things like that. So you really have to know what you're doing and really buy gem elixirs from people that know what they're doing as well and that are very safe with them. The second thing is to avoid extreme temperatures. So a lot of people love to charge their crystals in the moonlight. I am one of those people, although I do it less and less because what you can't see, this looks like a very normal person's like crystal collection behind them. Oh, look, a couple cute frames with these crystal grids. What you can't see is like, I have crystals everywhere else on every single surface in my entire home. So I can no longer take my entire collection out in the moonlight, number one, because my living circumstances have changed, so I lost my balcony. But also I just don't have the capacity to charge all the crystals that I have in my personal collection and in my business inventory out in the moonlight. It's a little too cumbersome. So what happens is that people tend to forget about their crystals and leave them outside overnight. And so one of those problems is if you live in an area where you get extreme temperatures, which is most climates, even out in LA, where I lived for several years, it can get really, really hot, which, especially if your crystal already has like a natural crack, a lot of them are self-healed, it can cause your crystals to break, either in extreme heat or in extreme cold, and especially if you go from extreme heat to extreme cold. Like if you bring a hot crystal out from the sunlight and put it into ice water, great example of science working. So just be wary of that. And I say that because, yes, outdoor temperatures are something to be considerate of when you're storing and charging your crystals, but also people put crystals in their bath as well, which again, water and crystals is one of my favorite things to do, but you really have to know what you're doing. So if you're a beginner and you don't want to put a lot of time, effort, and energy into it, just forget the water thing altogether. But know that if you're taking a crystal and putting into like really, really hot bath water, it could damage that crystal and cause it to like crack. And sometimes you don't notice it until later. So just be aware of what you're doing with your crystals and how they're being treated. Another common thing is people are like, oh, put your crystals in water. I have to say, I do love doing that, but it can damage a lot of your crystals, and some of which are toxic. So Hibiscus Moon has a really large list of crystals that are toxic. What I always recommend to people is just to stick with the quartz family whenever you're in doubt, because they tend to be sturdy and they can withstand, is that a word? I don't think it's a word. They can withstand or handle changes in temperature, although still if they're extreme, it can cause damage to even quartz crystals, but it's safe to put in water. The recommendation is always to use polished crystals. And then a quick thing, with the exception of shungite, which actually makes really wonderful elixirs and things like that, and is nice to put in a bath, avoid anything that ends with an ITE. Don't put that in water, but there's a lot of other things. For example, bumblebee jasper is actually not a jasper and has things like sulfur as part of its mineral composition. So you just want to be really mindful of never putting something like that in water, whether it's to cleanse it because it can damage the crystal, or to put it in your bath water, or in regular water to make it crystal infused. If you ever want to infuse or charge water and you're not sure if your crystal is water safe, a lot of times what I like to do is put a crystal, let me see, oh, I do have some tumbles right here. Like, actually, these are all water safe crystals. Put like a few crystals like this into a sachet, and then I'll tie it around. I like to pour water out of like clear glass jugs. So I have some glass jugs from IKEA that I just put some crystals in a sachet and then tie the sachet around that. and then put that in my fridge overnight. And now I have crystal charged water that I can either drink or I can use that and infuse that in my bathtub. You can also, a lot of people like to put their crystals in salt for whatever reason. I'm not even sure why I feel this way. I don't love like putting my crystals in salt overnight, and certainly don't put a wet crystal in salt. Salt water actually can damage some crystals like carnelian that aren't usually damaged in water. Fun fact. So, but what you can do is put crystals with like some salt or salt that you like to infuse in your bath, and then just put only the salt into your bath. And then you have, well, salt itself is a crystal, but you have very crystal infused water at that point. Other ways, now it's time to talk about things that you can do that are pretty much, that are safe for like every crystal to do. If you are, I don't want to go too much into this, but if you are Reiki attuned, if you're an energy healer of any kind, you can simply use your hands. You can just take a crystal, hold it in your hands. And if you're energy attuned in that way, you kind of know, your intuition, one of your spiritual gifts clicks on, and you just know when that crystal is done being cleared of energy. A lot of times, I know I'm pulling from source energy, but a lot of times I don't like clearing all my crystals that way, because if I don't think the energy of a crystal is clean, I don't want to touch it with my hands, because then I'm going to like be washing my hands or doing another clearing ritual on myself afterward anyway. Another reason is because I love smoke clearing. It could be I'm a pyro. You make your own judgment. So for smoke clearing, this is excessive. I know you can use a match for this. You can use a lighter. This is where I can go on a tangent and talk about a lot of different things. When you're beginning, what I tell people is burn things that smell good to you. A lot of people don't like the smell of burning sage, and also don't like using it because of Native Americans have asked us to stop using white sage. So I no longer purchase it for that reason. I've gotten it as gifts, as you'll see here. But also it's a little more complicated to burn them. So what I always recommend is get incense or something that you like the smell of when it's burning. You can use different types of bundled herbs. Sage is just one example. There are many others. In sustainably sourced Palo Santo. Make sure it's sustainably sourced because it is endangered. So all these fun things. Why I recommend incense is it's easy and it's not difficult to light. Palo Santo can be difficult to light. I guess you can use like this incense tray, for example, but you need a safe dish. It can be hard to light. When you get really thick bundles, it can be hard to keep it lit. So I just like incense. It smells the best. And I just always say, choose what smells good to you and what you intuitively like. People, so not only are we working with all these crystals that have properties, in addition to that, a lot of herbs, not a lot, all herbs and things that you might smudge with have additional properties. And then people worry about that. I say, just focus on using the smoke to clear and don't worry about what it is that you're burning, unless you're worried about the ethics. That I think is fine. So this is excessive. I use this because I like to work with charcoal. This is a creme brulee torch. It's a torch. I couldn't find a lighter or matches for this because this is what I like to use. So basically what you just do is you light it like regular incense. This, I'm realizing, is fancy incense, so it's taking a minute to light and stay lit. It's usually not this difficult. But if you've never burned incense before, what you're looking for, I don't know if you can see the kind of red embers, and for it to kind of start lighting and then smoking on its own. This is hand dipped, so it's usually much easier to light incense than what I even showed you. And so the way to do smoke clearing is anytime you're working with fire, use the appropriate tools. I kind of didn't mind because I was like, oh, I'm making a video, so like the torch is sexy, but be safe about it. Don't overuse it. It's a fire hazard, so just be smart when you're using it, and always use a fire safe dish when you're burning. If you're new and you've never used a loose incense and charcoal before, don't until you learn how to use that from somebody you trust. I'll do another video on that because really love loose incense. And I almost burned down my house trying to work with charcoal before. Be safe, guys, be safe. But otherwise, it's really simple to cleanse with smoke. What you do is you just hold the crystal that you're doing, and I'm trying to show you, it's not, I don't know if you can see the smoke that well. You hold it in the smoke, but far enough from the incense stick where you're like, it's like from here, I can see that it's hot. I don't want to go any closer to this because I don't want to burn myself. But you just wait until the smoke completely engulfs the crystal. And I can already, I become energy sensitive in my hands. So I can feel that it's working and it's cleared. A lot of times what I like to do is say something like, I'm using the smoke to cleanse and clear the energy of this crystal so that it may work at its highest potential. And it's as simple as that. And you don't have to say an incantation if you don't want to. I think it's nice, certainly not mandatory. And there's no right thing to say. It's whatever you want, whatever comes to mind. Whenever you're speaking incantations or trying to manifest, the best thing to do is to speak from your heart. That's it. It's that simple. Another thing that you can do is use sound healing. And there's so many different ways to do it. I would say this is probably my second favorite. So sometimes what I do is I have a pretty big collection. So I'm not necessarily going to take each piece one by one and clear it through the smoke. I do that when I get a new crystal. But what I do instead is I light this, and then I usually have a feather handy, and then I kind of waft the smoke to where all the crystals are. And because I do a lot of energy healing, they tend to be pretty energetically clear. So when I first started using crystals, I cleared them pretty frequently. I would say about once a week. Now, unless I'm doing energy healing on someone else, I do it about once a month, and sometimes more frequently, like if I'm already smudging something else, or like using a sound tool to clear the energy of something that I maybe just got in. I usually sprinkle the good energy around to every other crystal. So it's really up to you and what you're comfortable with. I think unless you have a small assortment of stones, doing it every day gets to be cumbersome. If you want to clear your crystals every day, I would get like a basket. You might even want to get, I have a wire basket that I got at the dollar store. What you can do is put like a bunch of crystals. And what you want to make sure is that it's permeable enough that the smoke can get through and into the crystals, but like using a basket or a sachet or something like that is another way you can clear a lot of crystals at one time. And when you're doing a big crystal, I am babysitting an amethyst geode for somebody who is traveling the country right now and doesn't have a home base. This is no longer lit, I put it out for safety reasons. But what I do is let's pretend this is a huge crystal. I then like take the smoke, sometimes with a feather. If I'm using incense, I'll hold the dish underneath as I kind of just go around and waft the smoke. A lot of people love to do sound tools. Like I said, this is my second favorite. Sometimes what I'll do is, because it's so easy to do this, like I'll do the smoke and then it just becomes a nice ritual to do some kind of a sound tool afterwards. It kind of infuses it. Like, so I kind of think of it as the smoke help clears away, removes energy. It's almost like an energetic dusting, if you will. And then going through here, just like infuses with a sound tool, rather, infuses it with some beautiful energy. And so sound tools can be anything, like a brass bowl, like this one, crystal bowl, tuning fork, tinctures, bells. I love koshi chimes. They're my favorite thing. You can also use, if you don't have any tools, you can use an instrument. Like if you've got a guitar, you play the piano, you can certainly use that. Sometimes what I do is I just leave YouTube on with instrumental music and just let that go for a while. And then I'll come back in the room and I'm like, oh, I feel cleaned up in here. It feels so energetically good. So to use a tool like that, I need both hands. So I'll show it to you this way. A lot of times what I do is let's pretend the crystals are below me, but you can just, if you're using a sound bowl, you can simply just hit it. And then I like hover it kind of over my crystals that I'm trying to cleanse. So this one's got a sticker on it. With a sound bowl, if you haven't worked with one before, you can hit it and then reverberate the sound. You can hold the crystal over the bowl, or hold the bowl over the crystal. It's really up to you. All you're trying to do is infuse the vibrations of the sound tool with the vibrations of the crystal. And what you're doing is you're entraining the frequencies to be at the same frequency level. And then I also mentioned that you can put your crystals in the moonlight. So if you have, and it depends on the size of your collection, what you can do is get a gathering basket, put your crystals in here, and then put them. What I like to do is, because I am one of those forgetful people and I would always forget to get my crystals in the morning, is I put it in my windowsill instead, where I don't get as much direct light. And then I just simply leave them there overnight. One thing for me, I don't believe that you have to have visibility of the moon to infuse it with the energy of the moon. So for example, if you're like, oh my gosh, it's cloudy, I can't see the moon, now I can't charge my crystals, and I really want to infuse it with the energy of the full moon, I don't worry about it, because one thing I love doing is infusing my crystals with the energy of the new moon. And the thing about the new moon is you can't see it. It's the dark moon. So I know that as long as the moon, like the moon's vibrations are so much stronger than me as a single person, I know that the energy of the moon will start to infuse and synchronize with the energy and charge the energy of my crystals, just by being as close as possible to the moonlight. So I like to do the windowsill. You can certainly do it outside. If you want to get more particular about it, you certainly can. I'm not going to tell you that it's wrong. It's totally up to you. But for me, it's just easiest to trust, and to trust that whatever I'm doing is going to be really positive for the crystal. So the last thing I'll show you too, because if I don't do this, a lot of people ask. I mentioned this in my first video, crystals for beginners. I'm also going to see one of these crystals is very, very polished and slippery, and it kept falling off, so I'm going to try to avoid that. What you can do is set your crystals on a piece of selenite and let the selenite, selenite is cleansing, very pure energy, very, very high vibrational. A lot of people find it to be like harmonious with higher angelic frequencies and things like that. So it's a very, very beautiful, purifying, and there that one goes, purifying stone. So you can set other crystals on top of it to clear it. Another thing you can do is hold your crystals out like so, and then, oh, this feels nice, I like this, is to like take your selenite and kind of just like hover over it and clear off your crystals this way. And this is nice if you have a bigger collection, and then you can kind of just go through, kind of like you were dusting. You don't want to like knock into your crystals or anything like that. Just hover over it and just clear the energy of the crystals that way. Every being, humans, everything, anything that vibrates, that's everything that's matter. I'll say that louder. I don't know if you could hear it. That's everything that's matter vibrates. So it's got an energy, an energy torus. Humans have an energy torus. We call it an aura. Scientists call it an electromagnetic field. Let me use a different one because it's the same color as my sweater. But yeah, so this little guy vibrates and it emits energy out to a certain point. It's energy torus. So when you take the selenite, which has another energy torus, kind of hover it over it, their energy meets and starts to tune to the highest frequency, the highest vibration. And that's how smoke energy works, sound energy works, and using another crystal to harmonize with the energy. That's how that all works. So that's all I had to show you today. I hope you enjoyed that. I'm so passionate about this stuff. I'm always like, oh, I can do this in 5 minutes. If pushed, I probably could, but I hope you enjoy a little bit longer of the explanations and some of the details behind it. If you ever want more, have questions about crystals, feel free to drop them in the comment section below. I do daily crystal tips, actually Monday through Fridays. I honor my space on the weekends and take weekends off. But feel free to check over on Instagram for more crystal tips. I'm also available there if you ever want to DM and ask questions there. All right, it was so good talking to you today. Have a wonderful, wonderful, magical day.